Hello, my name is Dr. Michael Mack. I'm one of the residents here at the University of Calgary, here to explain to you Cataract D anterior vitrectomy level 2. In this particular level, your job is to clear out the vitreous after a posterior capsular rupture has occurred, and you also have to remove the remaining cortex as well. So you want to start off with a bit of triamcinolone in order to stain the vitreous inside the anterior chamber as well as inside the bag. So like I said in my level 1 video, you want to start off at the bottom so that you can cut up the vitreous that's behind the posterior capsule and as well as the one that's immediately above the capsular rupture. The reason is that you want to try to cut up the rest of the vitreous that is immediately below the capsule so that you don't have traction and pull the vitreous forward, which will deduct you many points in this particular level. Now the challenging part in this particular level is that you notice the vitreous is actually adherent to part of the iris. And so you have to be very careful when you're trying to chase after the remaining vitreous, not only because you can cut up the iris and also the anterior capsule, but you can also damage the cornea as well. So you want to be very careful when you're trying to go after these remaining pieces. The simulator asks you to use the spatula in order to try to sweep the remaining vitreous back into the middle of the anterior chamber, but I find that you can just use the vitrector in different positions to chase after the remaining vitreous. It's a little bit more challenging, but I find, at least in my hands, that I oftentimes hit the cornea or hit the iris, and the machine says that you're really not supposed to do that. So now most of the vitreous looks clear, but like I've said in my other video, you want to try to check again and again and again. So now I'm just getting, I think, the vitrector because I saw a remaining little piece, and I'm just trying to clean it up. So the vitrector should always mostly be pointing forward or pointing towards the cornea. You never want to turn it facing towards the posterior capsule. The machine will deduct 2 points if that happens as well. So just going after that small little piece there. And now that that's done, I believe that I'm going to stain the capsule and also the bag and the anterior vitreous with Triamcinolone, just to see if there's anything left. So now I'm using the irrigation and aspiration by manual hand pieces. So I'm just aspirating the rest of the Triamcinolone, and now I'm going after the rest of the cortex. Like I described in the other video, at least this is the way that I found works. I set my flow to about 10 and my bottle height to about 60 or 55. That way the machine doesn't complain when you put in the irrigation aspiration, saying that the flow or the irrigation is too high. And I like using the vitrector to cut up the rest of the cortex instead of trying to aspirate it. So that was the end of that level. Let's take a look at that one more time. So first start off with the Triamcinolone. So you've stained all the vitreous and you notice that it's caught onto the iris and also a little bit of the cornea. So you want to start off at the very bottom. Here I'm just aspirating a little bit of the Triamcinolone to improve my view, and then I'm starting behind where the rupture happens. So I'm going through the rupture and then trying to cut up a bit of the vitreous there. I set my cut rate a little bit higher to about maybe 1,200. I don't know if that works for everyone, but that's what I use, and I find that it just cuts up the vitreous a little bit faster. So here I'm just leaving a little bit of strands, and then I'm pushing the vitrector on top of the iris so that I don't actually catch the iris. I think in real life that's a little dangerous because you may accidentally catch the iris if it's quite floppy or if it's billowing. So similar technique here, just going up and down a little bit so as to engage the vitreous. And the same thing there. Notice that I don't start my cutter until I'm kind of where I want to be, just so that if your cutter is on all the time, you may accidentally engage with part of the capsule, and then that will ruin your good score. Especially these levels are quite long now. They're almost like 4 or 5 minutes each attempt. So you want to be conscientious about what you're doing so you don't get frustrated and you have to start all over again because of a simple mistake. So here I'm restaining the vitreous to see if there's anything left. Just using my irrigation aspiration. And there's still a little left. So thankfully we did stain it beforehand. So we're going to go after it with the vitreous cutter. And notice at the 4 o'clock area, there's still a little bit of white left, so I just went after it. That piece is stubborn, it doesn't want to come. So I have to angle the eye a little bit more. The reason why I'm not using the port where the irrigation cannula or irrigation handpiece is in is because there's a glitch in our system. Every time I put the vitrector there, it says that it doesn't really recognize the instrument. So I had to be a bit creative and try to angle the vitrector to chase after those remaining pieces of vitreous. So just using the IA handpiece there, grabbing the rest of the cortex, then using the vitrectomy or the vitrector to cut up the rest of the cortex. And now just restaining one more time. And I'm just making sure that there's no vitreous left. And it looks pretty clean. So we scored 100 on both attempts. Now be very careful, be very cautious when you're doing these levels, and please like and subscribe for more videos. Thanks for watching.